Salutations, spooks, spirits, and specters, and welcome back to more Corpse Party, Book of Shadows, as Chapter 6 continues.
ちょっと考え事してて。ごめんなさい。
Sachiko lowered her head and looked like she was about to cry.
どうして謝るの？幸子、多分幽霊だから。お姉ちゃんと違うから。怖がらせちゃって。ごめんなさい。よかったらこんな小さい子を不安にさせるなんて。
I took Sachiko's hand in both of mine, turning to face her and ducking down a little so our eyes were level.
大丈夫だよ。幽霊は怖いけど、なんだかあなたは怖くない気がするの。怖くない？本当に？うん、幸子ちゃんは大丈夫。お姉ちゃん行っちゃうの？
I did have to think for a moment, since I knew I couldn't take a ghost with me very far. But in the end, I also knew I couldn't just leave her.
幸子ちゃんも一緒にゆかのお兄ちゃんを探してくれる？お兄ちゃん？うん、すっごく頼りになるの。きっと幸子ちゃんにも優しくしてくれるよ。
Her head was still down, but her eyes were peeking up at me. She looked nervous, but for the first time since we started talking, she also looked hopeful.
幸子も一緒に行っていいの？うん、もう一人じゃないよ。ゆかが、お姉ちゃんがそばにいるからね。へへへ。
Honestly, I was lonely too. I probably wanted her with me just as badly as she wanted someone with her, ghost or no.
さあ、行こう、幸子ちゃん。
I turned to head back down the hall, but was stopped by Sachiko tugging on my uniform. She was wearing a forced smile on her face, but still looked uneasy.
お姉ちゃん、私の言うこと聞く？言うこと？言うことって？
What was she going to tell me to do? I was so surprised by the question, I wasn't sure how best to respond. But the longer I thought about it, the more uneasy she looked, so...
お姉ちゃんね、あなたのお話なら聞くよ。本当？うん、だから何でも話してね。うん。
There was clearly something specific she had in mind, but I wasn't going to push her about it. She'd ask me when she was ready. She seemed satisfied with my answer and let go of my uniform, and so hand in hand, we continued down the hall in search of my big brother. let's try the storeroom again. Oh, I can actually go in.
鍵開いてないんだね。そうだね。こういう時お兄ちゃんならどうするかな。お兄ちゃんに会いたい？うん、とっても。鍵開くといいね。
The door is locked
鍵
in
開
tight.
くといいね。
Well, the girls' room is accessible again.
Sachiko ちゃん。ん？ねえ、そっちは何もないからやめよう。そうなの？でも調べなくていいのかな。大丈夫だよ。さっきしっかり見たから。さ、出口とお兄ちゃんを探そう。そっか、そうだね。
Well, it's locked. Well, I could check the cabinet in the death room, so maybe there's a key in there.
お兄ちゃん、やっぱりここにはいないのかな。そうだね。幸子ちゃん、ゆかの他には誰も見なかった？うん。
That's all she said, and then silently she squatted on the ground and wrapped her arms around her knees.
どうしたの？どこか痛いの？お姉ちゃん、寒いよ。寒い？
She nodded firmly, almost exaggeratedly.
そっか。幽霊でも痛みを感じるならきっと寒さも感じるよね。かわいそう。
As if to show me just how cold she was, she then started visibly shivering.
ねえ幸子ちゃん、何かゆかにできることない？何か。そう、幸子ちゃんがこれ以上辛くならないように何でも言って。じゃあお姉ちゃんのそれちょうだい。
She was pointing at my feet.
靴下？
This was the first time I noticed that Sachiko was walking around barefoot.
あ、
I was so busy worrying about myself and about finding my big brother that I'd completely failed to pay any attention to poor Sachiko's appearance.
ごめんね、すぐ気がつかなくて。いいの。
Sachiko shook her head.
私お姉ちゃんなのにもっと早く気づいてあげられればよかった。
If I were big brother, I would have noticed right away and given her my shoes. But it wasn't too late. I took off my shoes and socks and offered them to Sachiko. They were a little wet, but still better than walking on these cold dirt floors in bare feet. I didn't really like the idea of doing that myself, but just one look at this poor lost soul's shaking form convinced me I was doing the right thing.
ありがとうお姉ちゃん。
Sachiko took just the socks, leaving the shoes in my hand.
幸子ちゃん、靴下だけでいいの？上履きは？うん。だってお姉ちゃんが裸足になっちゃうでしょ
？She flashed a gentle smile at me, which stayed on her face the whole time she slowly put on both of my socks.
ゆかお姉ちゃんに怪我してほしくないから。そっか、優しいんだね、幸子ちゃんは。
I patted her head, just like Big Brother always did to me.
お姉ちゃん大好き。
Her smile had grown. It now stretched from cheek to cheek, and I began to feel like I'd do anything at all to keep her happy. I wondered if this was how Big Brother felt when I smiled at him like that.
頑張ろうね、幸子ちゃん。
Despite the severity of the situation, I was in high spirits. I almost forgot just how horrible this place really was.
頑張る？うん、お兄ちゃんを見つけられるように。ん？幸子ちゃん、今何か言った？
I thought that was a giggle, but it sounded different somehow, like her voice had changed to someone else's, or someone else was here.
ううん。かわいい。むちゃくちゃしたい。あ？何？何も言ってないよ。そっか、気のせいかな。
What is it they usually say in movies? Must have been the wind? Not too likely in a stagnant underground bunker like this, but still.
きっと怖がりすぎなのかも。もっとしっかりしなくちゃ。お姉ちゃんなんだから。
I put on the bravest face I could manage and marched back out into the hall, pausing only to make sure Sachiko was still behind me. So we're not going to check the cabinet?
ここはさっき来たところ？そうだね。他を探そうか。うん。大丈夫。きっとお兄ちゃんが何とかしてくれるから。お兄ちゃん？すっごく頼りになるんだ。へえ、そうなんだ。
Oh, you're not gonna let me check the cabinet now? Well, there's really only one place left.
お姉ちゃん。
Sachiko had come to a halt, and was grabbing loosely at the cuff of my skirt to stop me as well.
どうしたの？ここは嫌。怖い感じがするの。そうだね。お姉ちゃんもここにはいたくないな。じゃああっちへ行こう。うん。
It's a half-decayed skeletal corpse. Based on what's left of its clothing, it seems to have once been a schoolgirl, though there's no way to tell age. There is a student ID name tag lodged inside the shoulder joint, however. Komashiro Trade School, Asuka Mizuno. There's a rotting corpse here, emitting a horrific odor. Age and gender are virtually impossible to determine from outer appearance alone. There is a student ID name tag, however, bearing a decidedly female name. Shobu University Middle School, Aiko Sekine. It's a half-decayed skeletal corpse. Age and gender are virtually impossible to determine from outer appearance alone. There is a student ID name tag, however, bearing a decidedly male name. Karasuyama High School, Tsuyoshi Kawasaki. It's a half-decayed skeletal corpse. Impossible to determine, but a decidedly male name ID tag. Takane Municipal Middle School, Yuki Tanaka. It's a partially decomposed corpse. Since it's half submerged, it's impossible to determine age or gender appearance. The deceased student ID name tag is floating on the surface, however, and bears a female name. Ryuben's Academy Senior High School, Satomi Kurogi. Half submerged. Can't see it. Can't see it. Okay. Then I guess we'll leave. Let's check over here then, I guess. Nothing. 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 How about that very starting hallway where the spot I started at? Nothing. Is this door now open?
やっぱり開かないね。うん。 お姉ちゃん。なに？どうしたの？足が痛いの。足？
The soles of Sachiko's feet seemed to be bothering her quite a bit. As we stood there, I noticed she was fidgeting in place, trying not to stand on them.
そうだよね。幸子ちゃん、靴下だけだもんね。
She said nothing else. She just stared at my feet. She seemed to want my shoes now, but didn't want to say anything since I offered them earlier and she turned them down. So I just smiled and decided I'd offer them again.
私の上履き履く？いいの？うん、幸子ちゃんまた怪我しちゃうもんね。お姉ちゃんは？ゆかはお姉ちゃんだから大丈夫だよ。
I wouldn't accept any objections. I just took off my shoes and handed them to Sachiko, without another word. Cheerfully, she slipped them on over my socks. They were a little big on her, but I knew she'd feel better just having them.
ありがとう。嬉しい。じゃあ、行こっか。
Sachiko wasn't used to such big floppy shoes. She took one step and stumbled forward.
大丈夫？手つないでてあげるよ。うん。ゆかお姉ちゃん大好き。幸子ちゃん、ここは何もなかったから引き返そう。そう。このまま進んでていいのかな。
I guess we hit everything.
こっちがいい。
Sachiko was pointing down the hall, toward the spot where the earthquake had dropped me.
こっち？こっちに何かあるの？わかんない。けどこっち。何の音だろう。あそこに入りたい。あそこ？でもあそこは鍵が。今開いた音がしたの。何かあるの？お願い。入りたいの。そっか。じゃあそっちに行こうか。
Sachiko nodded firmly, then practically dragged me by the hand over to the door near my entry point in this underground maze.
なんかここ広いね。あっち。
Energetically as can be, Sachiko pulled me farther into the darkened room.
待って幸子ちゃん。痛い。
I suddenly felt a sharp pain in the sole of my foot and looked down to see what I'd stepped in.
釘？
The floor here was actually kind of a mess. It was bumpy and uneven, and there were all kinds of tiny, sharp-looking objects scattered everywhere. Not just old rusty nails, but bits of glass, loose wooden boards with jagged edges and splinters all over them, and plenty else I couldn't even identify.
血が出ちゃった。
かわいい。
幸子ちゃん？どうしたのお姉ちゃん。あれ？そっちにいたの？何だったんだろう今の声。
There are a set of bleach white bones in a heap against the wall.
小さい。まだ子供だったのかな。はあ、そうだ、幸子ちゃんは今いくつなのかな。いくつ？そう、何歳かな。小学生だよね。わかんない。思い出せないの。そっか。ごめんなさい。
Sachiko just stood there, with her head hung low, and a look of disdain on her face. She didn't say another word. It seemed safe to assume that she probably didn't have any memories from when she was alive at all.
ごめんね。気にしないでね。うん、ごめんなさい。
Looking a bit closer at the pile of bones, there's a student ID name tag jutting out from the victim's ribcage, identifying her as female. Renaissance Elementary School, Yukari Sekiya. Wow, so close to succumbing. It's a stack of folded up Japanese style futons.
これ何？これポラロイドカメラ
？Sachiko had found an old, oversized instant camera lying around somewhere and was holding it triumphantly in her hands.
眩しい。びっくりした。まだ使えるんだね。持って行ってもいい？いいけど重いよ。大丈夫。嬉しいな。
Smiling from ear to ear, Sachiko carefully examined every inch of that camera. She was an innocent little girl with a brand new toy.
お姉ちゃん、幸子疲れちゃった。この布団使えたら一休みしようか。うん。
Carefully tiptoeing across the litter-strewn floor, nursing my sore and bloodied foot the whole while, I snaked my way over to the futons. I didn't much like the idea of sleeping in the same room as a dead child, but I had to admit I was pretty exhausted too.
ちょっと湿っててカビ臭いけど、敷いたら横になれるよ。眠い。よし、じゃあ今敷くからね。
As soon as the futon was on the ground, as flat as it would go, Sachiko sprawled out on it. It wasn't long before her eyes started drooping. Alright. Well, I was under the impression that bumping into Sachiko would lead to badness, but, yeah, I guess badness still kind of happened because she asked for the shoes and socks and then kind of led Yuka into a room with... Oh, goodness. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and end it here. So thank you all very much for watching. And ciao for now. Ciao for now.